Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really diving into a question that feels like it's everywhere. It's not just being discussed.
Yeah.
It's echoing, all over social media, dominating the news, debated in governments, and honestly, probably whispered about at your own dinner table. The question is, are we actually standing on the edge of World War III? It's a thought that's keeping a lot of people pretty unsettled right now.
And that feeling, that deep unease, is exactly why we wanted to tackle this today. In this deep dive, our whole mission is to try and cut through some of that noise. There's so much fear, so much speculation flying around.
Right. It's overwhelming.
It really is. So we've looked at the material you provided, and our goal here is to offer some clarity, maybe a bit of empathy for how different people are processing this, and definitely some factual insight. We want to help you understand, with a clear head, are we genuinely on the brink of global war, or is some of this anxiety being amplified maybe by the way social media works?
Okay, yeah, let's definitely unpack that. And maybe the best place to start is with the alarming reality on the ground. Because while we talk about it online, very real, very serious things have been happening.
Absolutely.
Recently, tensions in the Middle East just escalated dramatically. I mean, what used to be simmering hostility, proxy stuff between Israel and Iran, it suddenly became direct military confrontation.
Yeah.
That's a huge shift.
It is a huge shift. We're talking kinetic action now, not just threats or covert ops. And the sources we looked at detail Israel's specific moves. These weren't random attacks. They were described as highly strategic strikes.
Aimed at specific targets.
Exactly. Key nuclear facilities inside Iran. Think about that. Targeting nuclear sites.
Yeah.
That's not just about, say, taking out a military base. It's a direct message about long-term capabilities, about Iran's nuclear program.
A very clear signal.
A very clear, very high-stakes signal.
Yeah.
The precision involved, the sensitivity of those sites, it tells you a lot about the intelligence behind it and how urgently Israel viewed the situation. It's them saying, basically, this is a red line for us.
And Iran's response, it wasn't delayed, was it? It came quickly and sounded terrifying for civilians.
Right. The sources paint a vivid picture. A barrage of missiles and drones launched directly from Iran heading towards Israeli cities' defense sites.
Just imagine hearing those sirens, air raid sirens going off in neighborhoods, families rushing to bunkers.
Exactly. That immediate visceral fear, people forced into shelters, lives were lost, the reports confirm that. And just fear taking over daily life, that constant anxiety. It wasn't just military versus military. It hit civilians hard.
So the conflict literally arrived on their doorsteps.
Pretty much, yeah.
Now, how did the rest of the world, the big players, react to this direct exchange of fire? Because everyone must have been watching.
Oh, absolutely. The world was watching, holding its breath, really. But the immediate reactions weren't, other countries jumping in with their own attacks. It was more measured, initially at least.
Measured how?
Well, you saw sharp words, definitely. Strong diplomatic positions being stated very clearly. But also, quiet preparation happening behind the scenes. Think United States, Russia, China. Their responses were calculated. It wasn't an instant escalation into a wider war, which is actually pretty significant.
It suggests they all knew how dangerous this could get.
Precisely. A shared understanding, maybe unspoken, of the immense risks involved if this spun out of control.
Okay, so let's break down those reactions. The U.S., for instance, they have a long-standing alliance with Israel.
Right, and they immediately reaffirmed that support. Very strong backing, military aid, intelligence, diplomatic cover, that was clear. But almost in the same breath, they issued a serious warning against nuclear escalation.
So support, but also caution.
Exactly. Urging restraint, trying to put the brakes on. It's this really delicate balancing act, isn't it? Supporting an ally's defense, but desperately trying to stop things from exploding into a much bigger, potentially nuclear regional conflict. It's like walking a tightrope.
And Russia. Their relationship with Iran is quite different.
Very different. Their reaction was described as deep unease, almost uncomfortable. For Moscow, Iran is a key strategic partner in the Middle East. Losing them, or having them destabilized, would be a major blow to Russian influence there.
Especially with everything else going on globally.
Exactly. They've invested a lot in that relationship, military cooperation, energy deals, coordinating in places like Syria, so they couldn't really condemn Iran, not publicly, but you could sense their concern that this escalation could disrupt their own strategic plans in the region. They don't want to lose that ally.
Okay, and China. They often call for diplomacy.
They did here, too. Urged peace, dialogue. But you have to understand, for China, this is also very pragmatic. It's not just about ideals. They have huge energy interests in the Middle East.
Right, oil and gas imports.
Massive amounts. Any major conflict that disrupts oil supplies or shipping lanes hits China's economy hard. Plus, they've been steadily increasing their economic influence across the region, Belt and Road Initiative and all that. So stability is key for their interests. Their call for diplomacy is tied directly to their economic security and long-term strategy.
So when you put all these reactions together, the U.S. Balancing Act, Russia's unease, China's economic concerns, what does it tell us overall?
Well, it really hammers home just how interconnected everything is now. But maybe more importantly, the speed of that connection. What happens between Israel and Iran doesn't just cause ripples anymore. It causes, immediate shockwaves globally.
You saw it in the markets.
Instantly. Oil prices spike. Stock markets got shaky. Diplomats were scrambling. The economic fallout, the political maneuvering, it's not contained. It spreads incredibly fast, showing just how fragile global stability can feel sometimes. It's like geopolitical instability is contagious now.
That's a really powerful way to put it. The speed of contagion. Okay, so that's the high-level geopolitical reaction. Yeah. But then there's this other layer, which is just fascinating.
You mean the reaction from younger generations?
Yeah, specifically Gen Z. How this incredibly serious, potentially terrifying global event landed with them. It's such a stark contrast in some ways.
It really is. And social media became the instant, ground zero for seeing that reaction unfold. Platforms like X, formerly Twitter, they just lit up.
With what? Panic.
Well, yes, some panic, definitely, but also trends. Hashtags like hashtag World War III, hashtag WWIEU. They were trending globally within hours. It wasn't just news sharing. It was this massive collective real-time processing session.
Filtered through their own lens, right?
Exactly. Humor, satire, memes, loads of memes. The speed was incredible.
And it wasn't just hashtags. The meme culture just exploded, didn't it? Reactions pouring in faster than any traditional news outlet could possibly report.
Absolutely. But the truly unexpected part, I think, for many people looking in, was how they reacted. Amidst all the fear and uncertainty,
Right.
They joked, they made memes, they baked bread.
Right. That baking bread thing, it sounds almost absurd against the backdrop of potential global conflict.
It does on the surface, but it points to something deeper about their coping mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
Previous generations might have responded differently, maybe more solemnity or protests or just quiet anxiety. Gen Z, though, this generation that's grown up online, hyper-aware, they seem to default to humor and these sort of mundane comforts.
You saw those viral tweets, right? Can you give an example?
Yeah, there were a couple that really captured it. One went something like, my toxic trait is that I use baking as a coping mechanism. Sad, bread, anxious, bread, WWIE, bread.
Wow. Just laying it there.
Totally. And then another one capturing a different vibe was like, WWIG is about to begin, and I just started a skincare routine. You know, that juxtaposition of existential dread and everyday routine.
It's so specific. Now, it would be easy, maybe for someone older, to see that and think, are they serious? Do they not grasp the gravity?
Mm-hmm.
But that's missing the point, isn't it?
Completely missing the point. This isn't indifference. It's absolutely not a lack of understanding. These jokes, these memes, this baking, it's a form of digital therapy. It's a collective coping strategy.
A shield, almost.
Exactly. Humor becomes the shield when the fear feels too big, too overwhelming to handle directly. It's how they process it, how they diffuse that intense anxiety. It's the Gen Z way turning potential catastrophe into this stream of relatable, often dark humor. Not because they don't care, but because they care so much, and this is how they emotionally survive in an age of constant crisis updates pinging on their phones.
So it's survival through humor and relatability?
I think so. It's their way of processing immense stress collectively online.
And maybe that's an aha moment for the rest of us. Understanding these different ways of coping. What looks like flippancy might actually be a necessary emotional outlet for a generation bombarded with information.
Absolutely. It really shows the generational differences in processing global events. We need empathy for those different responses, not judgment. It's about how humans adapt, you know?
Yeah, how the spirit adapts. Okay, so we have the serious geopolitical maneuvering, the unique digital response.
Yeah.
But let's get back to the underlying reality, because beyond the memes and the headlines, this is sobering stuff.
It is. And it's crucial to remember this conflict in the Middle East, it isn't just about Israel and Iran, as significant as they are. It's really a symptom, maybe an accelerator, of deeper geopolitical shifts that have been underway for a while.
Shifts that make the world more dangerous.
Potentially, yes. We're talking about fundamental changes in global power balances, the rise of multiple power centers, challenging the old order. It makes things less predictable.
And old factors still play a huge role, right? like oil.
Absolutely. Control over energy resources, oil and gas, it's still a massive driver of strategy and conflict, even as we talk about green transitions. And you can't ignore the role of religious extremism, which often gets tangled up with national interests and makes conflicts incredibly volatile and difficult to resolve. These are deep currents.
And then there's the nuclear question.
Yeah.
That always hangs over these situations.
Terrifyingly so. Nuclear capability, or even just the pursuit of it, changes the entire equation. It raises the stakes astronomically. Those strikes near Iranian nuclear facilities, that wasn't just tactical, it was a stark reminder of the catastrophic potential.
We also have new domains of conflict now, like cyber.
Increasingly central, cyber warfare. It's invisible, it can cripple infrastructure, power grids, bank spread disinformation, so chaos, all without firing a conventional shot. It blurs the line between war and peace, makes attribution hard. It's a whole new battlefield layer.
It feels like the complexity is just multiplying.
It is. And it's not just the big states or the tech. Our sources also mention these shadow alliances forming. Countries quietly aligning based on shared enemies or economic needs. Old rivalries getting new life with modern weapons and new justifications. It's this intricate web.
It makes it easy for things to escalate unexpectedly.
Very easy. A regional dispute can suddenly pull in other actors through these hidden ties or reignited tensions, widening the conflict rapidly.
And we're already seeing the economic fallout from just the threat of escalation. Right?
Oh, definitely. Tangible impacts felt globally. Oil prices jumped immediately. You feel that at the pump and the cost of goods. Stock markets got jittery. Investors started pulling back, seeking safety.
So less investment, economy slowing down.
Yeah, economy showing signs of distress. And this isn't just numbers on a screen. It translates directly to people's lives, right?
Yeah.
To your life. Higher prices, more economic uncertainty, maybe job insecurity down the line. That feeling of being confused, scared about what's next, it connects the big geopolitical moves to everyday reality.
Making that distant conflict feel unsettlingly close.
Exactly.
Which brings us right back full circle to that core question we started with. The one everyone's asking, are we actually heading for World War III?
It's the elephant in the room, isn't it? And we need to answer it carefully based on expert analysis, not just gut feelings or headlines.
So what is the consensus based on the material we have? Are the alarms justified?
Well, the expert view seems to be nuanced. A full-scale global war, think multiple continents, major powers in direct, all-out conventional combat, that's not seen as inevitable right now, thankfully.
Okay, that's somewhat reassuring.
Somewhat. But the chances of a broader regional war are seen as dangerously high. That distinction is critical.
So not global Armageddon necessarily, but potentially a devastating widespread conflict in the Middle East, maybe drawing in more players.
Precisely. A conflict that could reshape the region, have massive global economic consequences, and last for years. The Israel-Iran clash is a flashpoint with enormous potential to spread.
And what we're seeing now, this mix of actions, is what experts call hybrid war.
Yes, that term comes up a lot. It's not just about tanks and planes anymore. Hybrid war is multi-domain. It mixes conventional military action, like those strikes we talked about.
With other things.
Right. With cyber attacks targeting infrastructure or spreading propaganda. With economic warfare sanctions, disrupting trade. And crucially, with information manipulation. Using deepfakes, viral misinformation to confuse people, sow division, undermine trust.
It sounds incredibly complex to fight or even to define sometimes.
It is. The lines are blurry. And that's part of the danger. Because it's multifaceted, it's easy for things to escalate unintentionally. The real risk is that ripple effect.
How so?
If just one other major power, maybe one not initially involved, decides the stakes are too high for them not to intervene militarily, maybe because of an alliance, or perceived threats to their own interests.
Then they jump in.
They jump in, and that could trigger a cascade. Other nations get pulled in. Treaties get activated. It's like dominoes falling. A regional fire becomes a global blaze very quickly.
It sounds like nations need to be incredibly careful with their diplomacy right now.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to look at how some countries are trying to navigate this. India is a good case study here.
How is India handling it?
So far, they've maintained a pretty balanced, neutral position, calling for peace, restraint, pushing for diplomatic solutions. It fits with their historical policy of non-alignment, trying not to get locked into specific blocks.
But that must be hard, given their interest in the region.
Very hard. They have significant ties, economic, strategic, with countries on both sides of various divides in the Middle East. Plus, their energy security is heavily reliant on the region.
So if things really escalate,
If it becomes a wider war, India faces huge challenges. Potential disruption to their energy supplies, which would hammer their economy. Strategic dilemmas about who to support, which could strain relationships they've carefully built. Maintaining neutrality gets much harder when battle lines are drawn more clearly.
so their challenge is, what, to stay sharp diplomatically?
Diplomatically sharp, yes.
Yeah.
Militarily alert, making sure they're prepared for instability without adding to tensions. And morally grounded, upholding international law and humanitarian principles in the middle of it all. It's a tough balancing act, reflecting what many non-aligned powers are facing.
It really underscores how complex this new era of conflict is, which brings us to another point you touched on, how the battlefield itself has changed.
Profoundly. We need to get rid of that old image of war being just trenches and tanks. I mean, those still exist, but the modern battlefield is so much more.
That's digital, too.
Hugely digital. We're talking satellites for surveillance and targeting, algorithms processing vast data, maybe even enabling autonomous weapons down the line, and then deepfakes and viral misinformation as actual weapons.
Weapons designed to confuse and manipulate.
Exactly, to create false realities, incite anger, polarize societies. These aren't just side effects. They're tools of war, capable of causing immense damage.
And that leads to what feels like the most unsettling part. The war in our minds.
That's a crucial point from the sources, yeah. When wars start not just with bombs, but with fear campaigns, with manipulated rage, with rumors spread online like wildfire, they become incredibly difficult to contain.
Because the battlefield is everywhere, inside our heads even.
In a way, yes. The enemy isn't just over there. It's the doubt, the anger, the distorted narrative that can spread instantly through our networks, turning people against each other, undermining trust in institutions, in truth itself. It's a war for perception.
And the stakes of controlling that information are massive.
Astronomical. If you can shape what people believe, you can justify almost anything. Distinguishing fact from fiction becomes a fundamental challenge for everyone, a daily struggle. Being critical of information isn't just good practice anymore. It's almost like a form of self-defense.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the key takeaway? Where do we go from here with this knowledge?
Well, I think the main thing is that this conversation, everything we've unpacked based on the sources, it's more than just a warning. It should be a reminder.
And a reminder of what?
A call for awareness, really,
Yeah.
for seeking peace, for trying to find unity, even when things feel so fragmented and scary.
And practically, that means not getting swept away by the fear.
Exactly. Don't fall into the trap of fear-mongering or just reacting blindly based on emotion. That's what information warfare aims for. Instead, the call is to be informed citizens.
Actively seek out good information.
Yes. Look for credible sources. Question things that seem designed to provoke outrage, understand bias, and maybe most importantly, share truth, not fear. In this environment, sharing verified information, promoting clarity, that's actually an act of peace.
Because the alternative, war itself, is just devastating. We talk about it, it dominates headlines, but
The reality is that war shatters lives. It destroys communities, leaves scars that last generations. It doesn't matter who wins on paper. Humanity always loses something essential.
its innocence, its future.
Its children, its potential. The cost is just incalculable.
So before we joke about WWII memes or get lost in the panic,
Pause. Reflect on the gravity. Try to understand the nuances, the different perspectives. Let's genuinely hope, maybe even pray if that's your inclination, that sanity wins out. That diplomacy, however difficult, finds a way. That peace can somehow emerge from all this smoke and noise.
a crucial hope. Thank you for walking us through all that complexity, and thank you, our listeners, for joining us on this deep dive.
Stay aware, stay compassionate.
And most importantly, stay human.